And welcome to Group Chat. I am Justin Verrier, and joining me as always, Rob Mahoney, Big Waz, and I think I speak for all of us, or at least for one of us, when I say, let's go Mets!
That's right. Mets are back in the league championship series for the first time since 2015, where we should have freaking beat the Royals in the World Series. We were ahead in every single one of those games, and our bullpen let us down. But I'm not still bitter about it, if you guys can't tell. Yeah, man, just a magical run. This team was dead in the water in June and just had an incredible turnaround. I think in July they won 18 of 21 games, something crazy like that. It completely turned the season around, and now they're, one series away, 4 wins away from the World Series. It's just kind of crazy, man.
We're very excited for you, Woz. We're very excited for, honestly, what is a very robust contingent of Mets fans at the Ringer. But you also let slip some pretty disturbing news to me, which is that you are anti-Grimace. You're pro-Nets, but anti-Grimace.
Yeah.
At least as far as the two are affiliated. I can't say I understand that.
It's just, I don't know, just a professional outfit. I just don't think we should be embracing this level of tomfoolery. But hey, it's working. It's working, I guess. And yeah, man, it's just been a fun ride. The team is fun. Like Lindor, probably my favorite Met since Carlos Beltran. And it's just been so good. So freaking good.
So I just want to get this straight. Grimace, the McDonald's mascot, just like friend, whatever you want to call him, is a Mets fan now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, like it's something to do. He was like part of the streak that started the turnaround of the season.
He's responsible for the streak.
They feel like he's partly responsible for turning this thing around. And so, yeah, he's like mobbing fans on the 7 train on the way to Citi Field. It's become a thing. It's kind of hilarious. There was this local guy, radio guy, Licata. He had a whole meltdown about it. It's hilarious. I would encourage people to go look that up. It's quite hilarious and very New York.
I can't wait. I got to find that.
Rob, where would Grimace fall on your power rankings of McDonald's characters? Is he behind the burglar?
No. Hamburglar is an embarrassment. And I don't know what's the weird little like bird thing. You know what I'm talking about? There's like it's like Big Bird but smaller. Am I going crazy?
So it's not a big bird, it's just bird?
It's a small bird. It's a very small bird.
I don't know about this one. I know there's like one that looks like a hamburger too, in addition to the Hamburglar. So I don't know if there's like a turf war there.
I've never owned that Happy Meal toy, so I don't know.
So I'm happy to report the name of the weird bird is Birdie the Early Bird. I would say I'm neutral.
Bullshit.
I'm neutral on that, but I do like the guy who is a burger. That's better than the Hamburglar, as far as I'm concerned.
I kind of like the Hamburglar. Like, he's just been reintroduced into society. He's been reformed and just put back out there just to, make people happy.
But he's a recidivist. Like, he's constantly stealing more burgers.
Oh my God.
We are who we are in this world. So
this is a girl mascot. They needed a girl to round the thing out. So they had a girl up there. Got it.
Wow. Guys only for Waz. He will not allow any female mascots.
Listen, Title IX was enough. Come on
now. Anything else happening out there in the world of sports? You guys been checking in on the starting 5 yet on Netflix?
Have not checked it out yet. I'm not gonna lie. LeBron's like rehearsed media routine thing didn't seem like it would be the most compelling content, so I haven't been in a rush for it. Jason Tatum, great player, not the most interesting personality. Domantas Sabonis, don't even need to explain that one. But Jimmy Butler and Anthony Edwards, legitimately compelling, interesting public figures. And so to me, that's the selling point of the show.
I think we'll check it out at some point. Yeah. We have to. I think we're professionally obligated to at least get a sense of what's going on in there. But I do wonder with these sorts of doc series, like how much of it is an entry point for people who are not living in the trenches in the way that we are. I have a feeling most of the stuff that's discussed in it in terms of the meat of the narratives are things we have lived and experienced for a while. Now, the on-court mic'd up like footage and clips, some of that stuff might be at least a little bit new, and I'm looking forward to that. But overall, we know who these guys are. We know how their seasons went. the behind the scenes will be nice, but I wonder how additive it'll be for sickos like us, Justin.
Yeah, I watched the one episode and I kind of came away with that takeaway because I liked the quarterback version of this, which I really wasn't plugged into the last NFL season. The Giants were out pretty quickly, and so I stopped caring about it. And so like all that stuff felt new to me, which I watched the first episode of Starting Five, and it's like, I kind of know this shit. If anything, it's just like LeBron with the mic'd up to like add a little color to the fact that he didn't like the minutes like cap on him to start the season that went away very quickly. But he did dress up as Beetlejuice in the first one. So maybe if you're feeling in the spooky season spirit, you know, maybe you could plug into that and get something out of that.
That's a lot of makeup. It's a lot of work in the chair.
You don't do that for Halloween? You guys don't?
Absolutely not. Waz, are you a Halloween guy?
No, I hate Halloween with a passion. Just the idea that I would just getting dressed up to look stupid. It just never made sense. I'm talking about since I was like in kindergarten, the entire idea just never spoke to me. I'm just like, so wait, I'm just getting dressed up to look as stupid and horrible as possible. Like that's the point of this quote unquote holiday. I never got with it. And you know, just to speak to the show, yesterday I watched an episode of my guy Pablo Torre's podcast. And it's about Ezra Edelman, who did the OJ doc, which to me is the greatest sports documentary probably the greatest documentary I've ever seen. Right? He spent 4.5 years doing a Prince doc, and the Prince estate put the kibosh on it because it's too interesting. Because it doesn't just simply valorize this guy and make him a wooden, you know, like non-3-dimensional full human being. They put the kibosh on it. And that's what this, you know, star-driven, star-produced content is. Like Taylor Swift and Beyonce. Like it's just going to be an infomercial for the star. And that's not interesting. And I'm afraid that this Netflix thing is probably more of that and less of the OJ situation.
Well, I have some bad news for you guys about Halloween, just to circle back on that. 3 pods from today, or actually 3 weeks from today, so double that, 6 pods from today, it is Halloween. So you better believe we're dressing up for that one.
Are we pumpkin carving?
We could do that. I was just thinking we just show up in some cool NBA themed outfits, but you know, we can workshop it.
That goes great for guys like us historically. You know,
well, it goes great for me. I don't know about you. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
All right, let's get to the matter at hand here. Maybe put a timestamp in if anyone wants to just blow past us talking about Halloween for 20 minutes. Power Rankings, Part 5, second to last one, the penultimate episode of the preseason NBA Power Rankings. I gotta say, this is a good crew. Like the past couple have been like teams where it's like, oh, they're kind of like, let's see if they can get back to the version that they were before. This feels like some of the more exciting teams in the NBA, starting with number 10, the Phoenix Suns, who I gotta say, I know I shouldn't take much away from preseason basketball, but the offense looks crisp. It
actually does. It really does.
There's this one clip that I saw where Kevin Durant is bringing the ball up, Devin Booker screens from him, and then on the short roll hits Bradley Beal in the corner almost seamlessly, almost like a one touch to the corner. And then he makes that 3. Rob, I'm kind of feeling the Mike Budenholzer effect already.
Yeah, I think in a best case scenario, the Mike Budenholzer effect is a lot of that kind of autopilot. It's like create the spacing, create the framework, let these guys cook, let them get to their spots, but also let's remind some of the best shooters in the world where their spots should be. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences is how does one of the most mid-range heavy offenses in the league get behind the arc a little bit more. And that's what's been reassuring about the preseason is not even just the volume, but the way that they're looking to set up threes. The way, like the shots that they are trying to concoct. Because look, the Bucks, when Mike Budenholzer took over, were 29th in 3-point rate, and in his first season jumped to 3rd. This is not going to be that level of transformation, but a transformation is coming.
Yeah, it's just nice that they've been professionalized on offense. I get that Mike Budenholzer, like his reputation was kind of in the dumps after they blew that Miami series. And not even blew it, they got their doors blown off by a team that was clearly, obviously not as good as them. But you can't take away from the guy's coaching acumen. Like when he was in Atlanta, when he was in the Bucks, these guys play extremely disciplined offense. Like, there's no going off script and doing stupid shit. It's like, it's professionalized. Like I said, that's the word that I use for it. And to have like dynamic offensive players like Booker and KD and even Brad Beal, even if he is grossly overpaid, he's still a pretty dynamic offensive weapon. And so Budenholzer getting a hold of these guys and making it all make sense in a way that they won't finish last in fourth quarter offense this year like they did last, which is just one of the most insane NBA stats of my lifetime, that this team somehow had the worst fourth quarter offense in a league that had the Charlotte Hornets in it. It's, so I think this is going to be the opposite of that this year.
Yeah. Grayson Allen had a quote at Media Day where he says, if the top 6 shooters take one more 3, they'd be among the league leaders. And now that sounds nice on paper, although I do think that like guys aren't in the flow of the game thinking like, oh, I've taken 5 threes, I need to take 6 in order for this to really work out. Right. I do think a bag man is going to bag or go into his bag, whatever you want to say. But there's just so much to like here. There's just so much offense. It's hard for me to believe that they will be that bad again. And if Bud can just add some organization to there, some professionalization, as Waz alluded to, I think it works out. Rob, I'm a little bit more concerned about the defensive end. If you're adding a point guard in Tyus Jones and even Monty Morris coming in off the bench, it takes another wing defender off there. Are we closing with KD, Beal, Booker, and then plus Tyus Jones plus Nurkic? Then who's going to be defending wings? Is that KD? Is that Booker? So ultimately, I think the question is, I think we all agree that they might be better, and they probably will be better, but how much better? Can they get into the elite crew in the Western Conference?
I think they might be able to crash it. And especially in the regular season, I think there could be a really good regular season team that will have some of these issues to address in the playoffs. And I think just have a little bit to prove in terms of which of these supporting wings are going to be ready to be the guy at the back end of the rotation when the playoffs come around. Because we've seen what Josh Okogie's limitations are, right? Like we know more or less if you want to stack all of these smaller guards on top of each other, that eventually that's going to be a problem. Like you can't play this many guys of that size in one rotation at once. The defensive issues I think are well-founded and are a real problem. That said, they were pretty competent defensively last season. I just think that with the way that things are shaking out, as you alluded to, Justin, with moving more point guards into the lineup, in particular getting Okogie out of there, and even Royce O'Neal to some extent, like moving into a different kind of role, it's just going to ask a lot of Booker and Beal on defense. Like one of those guys is going to have to be quite good defensively on most nights. And I think they both have it in them. It just depends on how much they want to do it. And it depends on how much their bodies and Kevin Durant's body and help are going to hold up to that sort of two-way play all the time.
Yeah, isn't the point of having KD, Brad Beal, and Devin Booker on a team is so that neither one of them has to shoulder too much of an offensive burden, which theoretically would free them up to be, good defender. Like I've seen Devin Booker not just be a nice defender, like a good, straight up, like ball hawking type of defender, physical, all of that.
Without a doubt.
Like I've seen him do it and I know he's capable of it. Brad Beal has always had the tools. He's got the really long arms and always had some nice, pretty quick feet. He just hasn't always applied himself because in Washington, he was busy trying to drop 30 every single night with an insane usage. And now that that's not the case, your energy is freed up to guard somebody, Brad Beal, Mr. $50 million. Do your job. I don't think it's too much to ask of a guy who is ostensibly one of the leaders on the team to like shoulder that burden of being a great defender if he has the tools, right? Like we're not talking about, somebody like say a Domantas Sabonis at the center who's trying his best, like he's executing, he's in his spots, but sometimes dudes are just bigger than him. Brad Beal has tools, man, to be a really good wing defender. And so there's no excuse for it.
The other side of this, too, is one of the reasons they were so bad offensively in the fourth quarter was they turned the ball over all the freaking time. And that's juicing what other teams are putting up in transition. Like they are getting so many easy baskets because of those turnovers. Not only did they bring in actual point guards to help deal with some of that stuff, they brought in a very specific type of point guard in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris both, which is like low risk game managers. And when you have this kind of firepower, that's what you need.
Yeah. On the one hand, it does set itself up to be a classic big three problem, which who is going to be the boss or who's going to be in the mud doing the hard work? I think there's a world in which Devin Booker does both. Like, can he take on some sort of role that he had at Team USA where he is maybe even the highest scorer on the team, but also the guy grinding out on defense, especially in the clutch and the late game scenarios in the playoffs when you need that? That seems to be the most likely path forward, but I think you're right, Rob. I think if this team is electric on offense, if this is a top 5 offense and they could just execute late in games and put that talent to use better, I think maybe that stuff is mitigated on the defensive end. And so I'm pretty high on them. I don't have them in the top 4 in the West, but I had them right there. And I think you're right. If things go well, this team could be very good in the regular season.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about what the playoff picture is going to look like in the West, to me, they are a team I'm basically penciling in for that top 6. I don't know where they're going to fall exactly, but they are one of the biggest obstructions to teams like the Lakers. These teams that are going to be in the play-in mix that want to get that guaranteed spot. But the Suns are going to be out here winning, I imagine, around or more than 50 games. And that's a really high threshold for some of these other also-ran teams in the West to measure up to.
Yeah, if they enjoy some average injury luck on this team, yeah, they're going to be way better regular season product. I think they'll probably put out a top 5 offense. I don't even think that's any doubt to that, right? Like
they weren't that far last year.
Exactly. And Budenholzer being able to do this with the team in the Bucks that like their offensive talent wasn't crazy dynamic. Like Giannis is a dominant force. Chris Middleton is like he's a really good player, but like this you didn't look at that roster and be like, "Oh yeah, definitely top 5 offense, pencil him in." Absolutely not. So the fact that Budenholzer could get that out of that group, and now he's got guys as gifted as Booker and Durant and Beal and the stuff around it. Yeah, I think you could pencil these guys in for a top 5 offense, which should carry the day to a top 6 seed for sure.
Yeah. I've liked Ryan Dunn in the preseason.
Here we go.
He's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
The Oso Ighodaro hype train is just off the rails at this point because he's finding guys in the corner out of the post. So if they do tack on a couple rotation players from the draft or even the deep bench, if like you can get more out of Monty Morris and Mason Plumlee, there's enough there in order to mix and match there. Royce O'Neal going to the bench, I still have hope for being a credible wing defender when they need to supplant Tyus Jones with him in order to get more of that on the court there. So there's a lot to like here. My essential question goes back to Booker, though, because as I'm looking at the MVP race, and we haven't talked about that much in this series, I wonder how Booker factors in there. So the question I have down, buy or sell, Devin Booker, dark horse MVP favorite. Do you guys like that at all? I'm saying no.
I think with all due respect, he does not factor in there.
No,
okay. So he's 17th in FanDuel odds.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
That sounds
behind
about
Jaylen
right.
Brown, behind Tyrese Halliburton, which actually that one makes sense. Behind Kawhi Leonard, even. I don't know. I just see a pathway.
That's disrespectful. Behind Kawhi Leonard, who we know is not going to make the freaking games played threshold for this anyway, is nuts. But I just think he would have to demonstrate himself to be like so much better than KD on his own team to get that kind of MVP buzz. And I just don't see that happening. If they're playing close to the same level in terms of their contribution on offense specifically, he's not going to be in the MVP conversation. And I just can't imagine that he's going to be more productive than Luka Doncic and Shea, like who basically play the same position as him.
Yeah, we're not even saying that Devin Booker is the 17th best player in the league or anything resembling that. He's very much better than that. But between the balance of guys who are, I think, definitively better than him, your Sheas and your Lukas and your Jokic's and your Embiid's in that group, and then guys who just have more narrative juice and a bigger narrative case to make, like that's how you get into Tyrese Halliburton, right? Like that's how you get the Jalen Brunson case. I think all those things combined really box Devin Booker out to where I agree with you. I was like, the fact that he needs to be so much better than Kevin Durant to get in the MVP race that there wouldn't be a split decision for voters is kind of what stands in his way.
Yes, I don't disagree with you guys. I think the devil's advocate side of this would be, it feels like Booker is due for one like just completely game breaking, season breaking sort of performance, sort of season. Correct me if I'm wrong. This was a first team All NBA guy just a couple seasons ago.
Hell yeah.
And so like, I think he has it in him. Can he score 30 points, 32 points, especially if KD gets injured and all of a sudden he's getting more reps there? And then I just look at the Bud blueprint where it's like he comes in, they play over their skis like the Bucks did before when he got in there. And all of a sudden, like maybe they're second in the West and like, what a breakthrough, what a story. Like that's the narrative he can ride to maybe getting onto the ballot. He does have a lot of competition. There are a lot of guys, there are a lot of good teams in the West in order to vault, but like, I think the bones are there for it to happen, but I would agree. It's probably unlikely at this point.
So to me, the Suns would have to win something like 60 games for him to seriously get in there. And if KD's getting hurt at any point to bolster the numbers, they're not winning 60 games, right? So like, I don't know. I don't see his pathway to that award. But, you know, I'm here for a breakout Devin Booker season because he's one of my favorite guys in the league to watch.
He has everything he needs to do that. I just don't know that these are the circumstances that would allow it. And frankly, while we're talking about the injury situation and like KD popping out of the lineup and what that would do for Devin Booker's MVP case potentially, the layered injury risk here still makes me very nervous. And I think is ultimately one of the biggest like potential roadblocks to them having an actually successful season and certainly an actual successful postseason. Like they could be a great regular season team. One of their core guys gets hurt at the wrong time and they are all kind of prone to do that in their ways. And then all of a sudden everything goes off the rails, no matter how much great progress you made in your shot diet.
Yep. Anything else? Any other guys or things we need to hit here?
Well, along those lines, I don't want to overstate the importance of Mason Plumlee, but he's better than Drew Eubanks. And when your team has a starting center that gets hurt a lot, that is a not insignificant thing.
Drew Eubanks. I thought he was fine last year. I thought he was solid.
He was not fine last year, no.
The Jazz went out of their way day one of free agency to sign Drew Eubanks. You don't just do that for any other player, you know?
He's a Jasmine through and through. We know that.
That's true. All right, number 9 on the list, the Milwaukee Bucks, a team I feel like I flip-flop on practically every hour. I was very down on them, especially as we start to hear the buzz about Chris Middleton maybe being hurt. Gary Trent Jr. gets hit by a hard screen in the first preseason game, and he goes down for a short-term injury. It's just like, it's not what you want to see, especially when you have so much concerns about their depth. But then I'm like getting into the weeds of it, and I'm like, God damn, there's still a lot on this team. And so I don't know, Rob, do you follow one way or another? Because I find myself still very much like on the fence with the Bucks.
I have very clear reservations about this team, but I want to anchor the conversation in the right place, which is a banged up, compromised version of this team just won almost like nearly 50 games. Mm-hmm. And so we hold them to a high standard because Giannis is fucking unbelievable all the time. And he dragged them to a lot of those wins. But they win a ton, and they will win a ton again. And honestly, for as much as we talk about Dame as a player who either is in decline or had a bad season or however you want to portray it, I thought he was fine for the most part last year. Some better moments than others. Clearly had a lot going on that contributed to a sort of spiral as far as like just him being like a stable every night all NBA level player. I just think the Bucks are going to be really good. And they're going to be really good in a way that is still kind of fundamentally flawed at the end of the day.
Yeah, last year, it's funny because you mentioned they won 50 games, Justin. I don't think this was a 50-win caliber team in terms of how they played overall last year. They got off to that really great start with Adrian Griffin. They were like 29-7 or something crazy like that. But if you looked at their point differential, they were just barely eking out a bunch of close wins. Like they didn't have the profile of that kind of team. And then, you know, a bunch of people get hurt, they make a coaching change, and the whole thing just gets thrown into disarray. And so like a part of me is like just having a normal flow to the season will do wonders for this team. When I saw Dame, I think he was talking to Jeff Teague and them on their podcast. Like Dame like looked like he was in incredible shape, right? Like, so he's coming in like more refreshed, it's not like a surprise trade to Milwaukee like it was last year. I think that stuff is going to be good. But I think him and Giannis, if they don't figure out how to be great for and with one another, I don't think the Bucks are going to be as threatening as their potential would indicate that they should be, right? And then Chris Middleton, man, this injury stuff is just is getting to be kind of depressing at this point. So like what can they even reasonably expect out of this guy this year?
Yeah, so with Giannis, I'm of two minds here because I think like he's kind of setting himself up for what might be the all-time revenge season. Like, and Giannis is already like going to go balls to the walls and give it his all and everything. And so if we're talking about MVP candidates, he has to be very high in that list for that reason. On the flip side, him not being able to really finish the past two postseasons is concerning. And I am starting to worry that like, because he goes so hard in the regular season, does that have a diminishing effect later on in the season? Is that like piling up injuries at a time you don't need them? Like the fact that he wasn't available in that Pacers series made the difference. And so I'm starting to wonder if the recipe that they've kind of gone with for so long, like Giannis playing his ass off and the structure of Middleton and Lopez, obviously Dame adds a new wrinkle to that. I wonder if the actual blueprint is to be worse in the regular season to be better in the postseason, because I'm a little worried if they're going to go so hard in the regular season, you might keep falling into the same trap there.
I think the difficulty with that is this is a team that does still have a lot to figure out. Like they have things they really need to iron out in how they play even still. And they also need to build confidence and they need to build camaraderie and they need to figure out this kind of revamped supporting cast and where everyone fits in. And so there's a lot that needs to be sussed out at full game speed in the regular season. And I think that's where the Bucks get into some trouble because you're right. They do need Giannis to go super hard all the time to be a highly competitive team. They are not the same team if his minutes are being reined in or if his effort level is being controlled, which also good luck trying to get that guy to play that way, frankly. Also, they're so reliant on him for their defense at this point. And I think this is a big part of why he had to overexert himself so much last year was they were just bleeding points, especially in transition early in the season. And after they hired Doc, it got a little better, but I wouldn't say it sewed everything up. It was still Giannis having to bail this team out. And if there is a path to letting Giannis have an easier season, it's somehow improving the defense beyond basically like a middle of the road team, which is what they were by the end of last season. And I think that in itself was a solid kind of tick upward, but I don't know where the radical transformation is in terms of this collection of players all of a sudden being a higher level defense than that.
Yeah, Doc Rivers got to earn his check this year, honestly, because he does have to establish what their rules are on defense so that guys like can be held accountable when they're not doing their job. And I think more importantly, man, the offense has to have a logic to it. You can't just have guys breaking off plays in the middle of it to do their own thing, feeling like they're empowered to do so. Like you have Dame Lillard, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo. You should be able to generate high quality looks on a regular basis with that combination of plays. If you have just average shooting around it, you should be able to generate just incredible offense. And so Doc, to me, the defense here, that like not getting back in transition, they were just getting smoked with that last year. And then they couldn't decide if they were a switch team, if they were a drop team, if they were a hedge team, if they were like, they could not decide what their identity was on defense either. But I think the offense is really where Doc has to make his hay, man. Like they have to be an elite offense for this to work. They can't be middling. They can't be okay. Their defense is not going to save them. They have to be a great offensive team, and Doc has to put that structure in for them to be that.
Yeah, some of that is on just Dame and Giannis kind of ironing out whatever wrinkles still exist between their chemistry. But I also think this is a pretty good opportunity to talk about Chris Middleton, who I have down as the essential question. Did he have the worst offseason of anybody in the entire NBA? Because just to run this back, so apparently he had offseason surgery on both ankles. And just to be clear, you only have two of those.
Yeah.
He may play in the preseason, but frankly, it kind of sounds like Doc bullshit. So we'll keep an eye on that. Then we had the clip a couple days ago in which Bradley Beal professed that they tried to trade, the Bucks did, Middleton for Beal before he went to the Suns. Not a great situation, probably not what you want to hear as you're kind of dying on your shield for this team. He also apparently took a couple of his teammates to SpaceX, which, not great these days. I don't know if you really want to be associated with Elon Musk, but that's up to you. I just, in the postseason, I think it was like 42 he had in that OT game against the Pacers. I was like, God damn, Chris Middleton can still get it after all these years. It was great to see that version of him step back up, but then you see the injuries start to pile up. He's just not the same player. And this is a team that is top heavy and relies on its top four to do a lot for them. So if you already lose that, if Brook Lopez is starting to show signs of aging, he's 36, I believe, this year. So it would be expected. So that's the stuff that really worries me, Rob.
Yeah, I would worry less if they had the depth to actually ease Middleton in the way we're also talking about Giannis, right? There are multiple players on this team at this point that need to be eased through the season. And the options to do that, in Chris Middleton's case, Taurean Prince, who I think was a good get for the Bucks under the circumstances, but let me tell you, he will not save you. That is not the way this works.
Hey, he's playing the four now, man.
I congratulate him, and I look forward to seeing it. Pat Connaughton is not the player he was a couple years ago, has not been that guy for a while now. Gary Trent Jr., is streaky as all hell, and he will have awful, awful games where he cannot hit anything. And those are your best options. Those are the most experienced options.
Can I ask you, Beasley or Trent Jr.?
Oh, Trent.
Okay.
It's not even close. It's not even close.
Just checking.
The fact y'all managed to loop Beasley into every single podcast is hilarious.
It's just weird because we all have our things. Rob just picks the fringiest guys to really stick in his craw, and I respect that about you.
People just kept telling me he's a really crucial, important player who's going to mean something to these playoff teams, and it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry.
It hasn't proven itself to be the case.
Gary Trent could be. I think he could be a guy who has a huge playoff series, who has some big moments. He can put a team over the top if it's the time of the year where he's hitting. It's just a little bit less reliable than you might like.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy teams know they have to guard at least, right? Which again, you put that around Dame and Giannis, and again, your defense is gonna be compromised. But if you are playing your up to your very best potential on offense, that puts defenses in a bind. Teams have to account for that, right? And so I like the Trent thing. I think Taurean Prince is he's a nice guy to be playing 14 minutes a game. The idea that he would be crucial what you're trying to accomplish seems insane to me. And I hope that Doc gives these young guys a Beauchamp, a chance to prove their mettle, man. Come on, Doc.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Give him a chance, coach.
I would love it. Honestly, if Doc is not going to play your young players, I thought that the Bucks had a pretty novel draft strategy, which is draft guys who are so young they will outlast Doc's Bucks tenure.
There you go.
So, at some point, AJ Johnson will play basketball for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know when it will be, and frankly, where this team is competitively right now, he probably should not be playing minutes.
Yeah, I think those guys, though, are going to be so crucial to this team because I was looking at the guys that went out from this team last season, and it's a lot of guys that aren't playing basketball anymore, or if they are, it's overseas, like Jay Crowder, Patrick Beverley, Danilo Gallinari. All played minutes for this team down the stretch, and probably for Doc Rivers. They are no longer in the NBA as of right now. Malik Beasley obviously went to the Pistons. Campaign also with the Knicks. Not a crucial bench guy, I would say, unless they get really dire there, given their reserve situation. So if Trent, Prince, DeLon Wright even can give them something, that's going to matter more for a team like the Bucks. But again, this might be the classic case of names on paper. What are they actually going to get from those spots? I think Trent is the one guy you would have hope for because he probably should have gotten a better deal elsewhere. This seems like a 1-year make good, and maybe he can go somewhere else after the fact. He's still pretty young, but I agree, Rob. He's streaky. He's not reliable. Is that the type of guy you need from a lock solid fifth spot on this team? Because they need consistency more than anything, especially with these injuries and these older players.
And I think what we're narrowing down with this team is they are quite good. They're not so good that you would consider them to be one of the definitive favorites to win the East. Frankly, they're staring down a Celtics team that is just probably too versatile for where the Bucks are right now. A Knicks team that could be really awesome. a Sixers team that could be very overwhelming, even given the size that the Bucks have. Those are the facts on the ground this season. This is a team that is built to compete this season. This is not a team that has a bunch of young players coming up the pipeline who have already proven themselves to be impressive prospects. Like, it's hard to look at Milwaukee and think, oh, they're building towards something significant. The significant time is now, and they have to be good right now.
Anything else on the Bucks? Any other players we missed here? Basically read off the roster.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Delon Wright. I actually do think he's going to be a nice fit there.
Wait, who's their backup center right now? Is it Anzis Pashekniks?
I guess it's Giannis or Portis.
Yeah.
Would fall in that category. I assume they'll play more small with Giannis at the center if they're talking about Prince playing the 4, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would hope so. Portis at the 5 is a huge problem defensively, and they just couldn't stop anybody. Did not work. Yeah. And even with that said, they still don't play Giannis at the 5 that much as like the true only big in lineups, or at least they have not historically. I think there's reasons for that, including ones we've kind of illuminated. It's a lot of pressure to put on him to have to cover up all of those gaps, but that could be a really cool look for them in spots, in like a death lineup kind of capacity. Can you put Giannis at the 5 with some good spacing and let everyone cook?
All right, let's move along to number 8, the Memphis Grizzlies, a team with a lot of guys. They do not have a problem like the Bucks do. They have so many guys. I think that the hype train is pretty much out of control at this point about this team. And I am very high on them. Like, you see Ja Morant back out there in the court, you're like, God damn, this guy's electric. Like, there's no way that this team could be so bad. Also, Zach Edey, instantly, like, Ja has the muscle memory playing with the road graders like Steven Adams. It's like, oh, here's that. Plus, he has vertical spacing without ever having to jump. Like, I don't know if it's called vertical spacing if you just have to reach up as opposed to actually go vertical in the air. I'm pretty high on what he could be in that lineup. Unfortunately, starting to already get the injuries.
Yeah,
creeping in here.
It's already here. I can't believe we're doing this again.
Ja Morant sprained his ankle for what seemed like getting hit with a pass by the ball on his ankle, and he sprained it that way. Jaren Jackson Jr., hamstring strain. Both of those guys expected to be back by the season opener, but Vince Williams out at least 4 weeks with a stress reaction in his tibia. Gigi Jackson out 3 months with a broken right foot. Those are the depth pieces where I was finding a lot of my confidence, in addition to the starting 5, where it's like, this team is super deep. They have a lot of options. Like, they could play through injuries. Brandon Clark, we should mention, got a little bit of burn toward the end of last season, but coming back from his own pretty serious injury. And so I'm starting to worry a little bit more that maybe this is going to be a good team, but maybe not so much the electric top 4 competing for the top seed in the West sort of team.
Let me put you in the spin zone.
Oh, okay.
What if all of these early season injuries, significant though they are less important than getting Ja Morant back up and running as the full speed organizer and driving force of an offense? And so, yeah, some of the pieces are out to start the year, potentially. Certainly some of them guaranteed. Gigi Jackson's going to be out for a bit. But if Ja can get there and get off running and get this team going from the start, there's even like a little less to sort through as far as the depth of this team and how everything needs to be collated and triaged. Like, he can just be the best possible version of himself and incorporating back into like the remnants of a team that he remembers, more so than the version of the team that the Grizzlies ultimately kind of became over the course of the last year.
Yeah, if Ja's back to playing like an MVP candidate, which, like, before all of this crazy stuff started happening, that's what he was. He was an MVP candidate level of player. If he's back to doing that, I'm not worried about Gigi Jackson's foot injury. That's just how it goes.
Well, I'm always worried about Gigi Jackson's foot injury, but I take your point.
When he comes back, it'll be great, but Ja just elevates everything Bane is doing and everything. Certainly Jaren Jackson the third is doing on offense. Or is he junior or is he the third?
He's junior. You're always throwing in extra Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, it's just you know these guys, man. Marcus Moore is the senior, the junior. Like, I don't know who these dudes are anymore. He just elevates what the other guys do so much, man, by his presence and his relentlessness. And so if Ja's out there, you know, healthy, and he's giving it a go. And then it's not just what he does on the court in terms of the gravity and his freaking playmaking and court vision, which is just still continues to be the most underrated part of his game. It's just the attitude that these guys play. Like, it's tough being that arrogant bunch of shitheads that these guys are to their core when Ja's not out there. Like, Desmond Bane doing his whole "I'm a tough guy" flexing on people act. It's just not the time same to lose was when Ja's not out there.
Yeah, so they're getting Smart back. He's actually going to play this year after only showing up for a couple early season games. Bane seems like he's ready to take off, like probably the leaping pad that everyone expected last year when Morant wasn't out there. I think he's going to settle back into a better role. Like, this is a good goddamn team, and they were good before last season fell apart for them. And if anything, like, they've added a couple additional guys on top of that. Like, yes, Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams not being there. A little concerned because they are pretty thin at the wing spots. It gets to Luke Kennard very quickly, and we've seen how that's gone. But I
like Luke Kennard though. Like, as far as reserve options go, I don't mind that.
He's always the guy that you think is going to be more important than he is. Like, you can't rely on him in a playoff series type of guy. But I like him. And if we're comparing like ninth men, sure, like he's definitely going to be at the front of the pack there. Your guy Santi Aldama also around there. So there's a lot to like about this team. They can only be so bad. I think, Rob, I think the question is, like, just where does it stop when it comes to how good they can be?
For the record, Luke Kennard is one of the best shooters in the league and has done very well in the playoffs. I just want to put that down.
He's not done well in the playoffs. He cannot play defense.
Well, that is a slight issue, but for the Grizzlies, less of an issue. And I think ultimately that's one of the reasons I came out of last season, insane as it was for all sorts of reasons, ultimately pretty bullish on this group. And it's like, the Grizzlies had no reason to take last year as seriously as they did and to take games as seriously as they did. And they turned out an above average defense despite all of that, despite all of the injuries, despite everything that was happening in their orbit. They almost like cannot help but be a good defensive team. And that gives a little bit of cover to guys like Luke Kennard, or, Santi Aldama is a little bit better than Luke Kennard on defense, but maybe not that much better. Even John Morant, who is no stopper himself. Let's remember this dude was getting put in the rim by Patrick Beverley. Like, they need help and they need backup. And that's where Jaren Jackson is clearly one of the most important members of the team. But I think overall the structure and the energy and the ethos that they play with is to guard and to guard aggressively. And if they have all that going for them with this depth, I just think they're going to win a lot of games.
I was looking up some stats on Jaren Jackson Jr. before. He apparently had the 13th highest usage rate in the entire NBA last year.
Not what you want.
Not good.
But if he can translate some more of that ball handling into being able to, like, attack a closeout every now and then, like, that's obviously going to help exponentially. So, like, if they grow in incremental ways in addition to getting Ja back, I agree. This could be pretty good because, by the way, just to remind you, they played 33 different guys last season, and it was an absolute mess.
Yeah, threatened for the record, I believe, if not won the record for how many players they played in a season.
It was up there for sure.
As far as the Jaren Jackson usage goes, like, in fairness to him,
there's no
a matter of necessity, more so than like him having delusions of grandeur.
Yeah. We should talk about Zach Edey though, because I have to say, going into the draft, I was skeptical about where this guy would end up. I kind of saw him more as like a sixth man, change it up sort of post scorer. And he just seemed to fall in the exact perfect situation to leverage what he is, which is just a giant human who is fairly mobile for his size. I don't think he's going to be winning any track meets, but, he can get up and down the court quickly enough in order to play next to a John Morant. Just the early returns, I thought, like, he fits immediately. And I have to wonder, like, not only is he going to be good for this team, like, do we have to start considering him more for, like, the rookie of the year conversation? Because the field is going to be pretty depleted. We could talk about some other guys, but
you're not juiced for the Ricochet like you were in our text last night talking about how great Ricochet looks.
I don't know if you want to talk about that, but, like, hell yeah, I am. Like, I think he could be pretty good.
Are you ready to go on record as being pro Ricochet?
Yes, pro Ricochet. I don't know if he'll be rookie of the year because the reason I like him is he seems like he fits that in between. Yeah, like he just seems like he plays the right way and the shooting is coming around there. And so like I could see it. Rookie of the year, I think it's Edie, or I mean, if you want to talk about Reed Shepherd, like that guy's fucking electric. Also has a mustache now, so might be my favorite player in the league. I
Justin,
would say,
do you not see what's going on above my lip right now?
Oh,
In solidarity with Reed, yeah, of course, man.
You getting ready for the cowboy outfit when the Spurs make the play-in? Just going to grow your own?
Did y'all see that Bruce Brown gave all of the Raptors cowboy boots?
Love that.
Oh,
great teammate.
That's great.
Incredible. I mean, one of the few players in the league with, I believe, still an active Stinson sponsorship. So he's hooking it up. Bruce Brown knows how to live.
But what do you guys think about Rookie of the Year, Zach Edey? I will say this, like, I think like he could be in the mix, if only because there aren't a lot of obvious candidates. I worry he won't have the counting stats, but I could see him being a rookie contributor at the high levels.
I bet you he shoots it at like 60% field goal shooting this year. Just like a bunch of cleanup, bunch of dirty work, buckets. What I'm interested to see is the Grizzlies, when they were at their best a few years ago, they were mauling guys on the offensive rebound, on the offensive glass. I wonder if Edey is going to be able to insinuate himself in that way, like actually play like he's bigger than everybody else in the NBA. And if he's doing that, that just makes him such a more dynamic and play, because it's like, all right, we're losing the sort of foot speed that you kind of need in the modern NBA, even at the center position. But this guy is going to destroy any freaking switch that you try to put on him. Like, don't think you're going to put some 6'6" guy on Zach Edey and he's not going to just put an elbow in that guy's grill. And he's also going to maul these guys on defense. On the offensive glass. And so that's what I'm interested to see, if he can actually play big in the NBA.
I think the Grizzlies are set up, especially when Jackson is healthy, to do that, to hunt offensive rebounds, to send Edey to the glass. Because one of the things that Jackson does really well is the blocks that he gets come in very like non-traditional circumstances. He can be the sort of hang out in the lane rim protector if you want him to do that, but he's going to get chase downs. He's going to be an open court menace, challenging and altering and chasing down shots. And so when you have one of your bigs going on the offensive glass, the other one of the best shot blockers in the league, booking it back from the three-point line to protect the basket, that's a formula that makes a lot of sense to me, and a formula that I think is part of the reason why Edey, to me, is not just in the mix for Rookie of the Year. He would be my pick for Rookie of the Year. I think between him as sort of a known quantity, like we know how he fits with this team and what he's going to do, and most importantly, the fact that he's going to play. Reed Shepherd has a lot of competition for minutes by comparison, and there's going to be nights where he probably gets squeezed out a little bit, but Zach Edey is a huge part of what Memphis is doing. And supposing he can be healthy and hang through the season, I think the counting stats are actually going to be pretty respectable. And as Wosny will do, the efficiency is going to be off the charts.
The West is getting bigger, and it feels like the Grizzlies are huge, even by comparison to some of those other teams. Maybe not as big as Denver, for instance, but also maybe a little bit more mobile. And the fact that like if Edey can move a little bit more, I could definitely see it. Reminds me a little bit of what the Thunder have going with Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren.
Right. That's exactly. And if Brandon Clark is right, man, and I really do hope he is, because he's one of the more fun and exciting guys to watch. Like his energy and motor are just second to none. I love watching him hoop. Like that's a really dope big man rotation, right? Jaren Jackson, Clark, and Edey, and it's versatile. Like if you need to handle a big bruising, I know, I get it. There's way less of those guys in the NBA today than there used to be, but sometimes you need that, and you need to throw in a different pitch. Like the fact that they got those three guys, if they want to get in a track meet with people in terms of, being more switchable or, being more aggressive in terms of attacking the pick and roll and attacking the ball handler on the pick and roll. They have options for that. They can be a drop team against worse shooting teams. Like I love the sort of the diversity of options that they have at the big man position.
And they're going to need that. I think they are a big team in the front court. One of the things we haven't really talked through is they're going to have to figure out a way to play Bane and Ja and Marcus Smart together a bunch. And even if you want to like put Vince Williams in that group, Vince Williams is long, but he's 6'4"-ish. Gigi Jackson has legit size and is kind of in a different category, but those guys, Luke Kennard, Scottie Pippen Jr., who should get real minutes this season. I thought he was one of the bright spots last year. Good NBA player. That's a lot of guards. And I think we're going to see a lot of 3-guard lineups out of the Grizzlies. So they're going to need the 4-5 size.
Yep. Anything else for this team? All right. Let's keep it moving. Number 7, the Philadelphia 76ers, appropriately at 7. I feel like I need a cold shower before we talk about this team.
Yeah.
Because I find it really hard not to get super excited about what they have. Like, I just can't think of a team where the big three aligns so perfectly, not only in terms of positions, but also where the players are at the right stage of their careers in order to make sure that everyone is getting what they need. Like Paul George, I feel like the Clippers did him a great service by telling him to go away, because he ended up in the exact perfect situation for his point of his career, where it's like, yeah, you could still be one of the superstars on the marquee, but if Maxey is actually our second best player and you kind of work the in-between game, like we'll pace you along and then you'll still get your moments and whatnot. We'll still use you in all the great wing play that you can give, particularly on the defensive end. Like, that is incredible. And then if Embiid is healthy, which is obviously a big if, which we're probably going to talk about ad nauseum, it's just like everything falls in line so well. I thought like the work they did on the fringes was very good. Even like Gerson Yabusele coming off the Olympics, like, let's go with this team. But then it's just like, oh man, I don't know, like the injuries first and foremost, but also teams that come together like this don't usually have great success in the first season. And so like I'm trying to balance like my enthusiasm with like what history has taught us about big three teams.
This is the frothiest I've ever seen Justin about a team that is not the Boston Celtics.
Well, that should tell you something about
really
the
does.
Sixers prospects this year.
I think what they've built is pretty impressive when you look at it on paper in terms of the logic of what they're going to do. Like, the not so subtle secret is that Maxey's actually going to be steering the ship here. He's their main, like, all right, I can get down the hill. I can get by guys. Like, Paul George can't really get by people the way that he used to. He just doesn't turn the corner on guys anymore. Whatever, he's 34 years old. But when you think about when they do go to him for shot creation, or they do go to him to just make a wide open shot, which will be generated around what Maxey and Joel are doing on the 2-man, and you think that Tobias Harris was employed to do these jobs last year, I understand why Justin gets excited. Like, it makes sense. And then, you know, having Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre and even KJ Martin, who I've always been pretty high on, like I think having those guys running around and doing a lot of the dirty work as wing defenders and just like go sit in a corner and be happy doing it and just make a wide open corner three. Like, the logic is there. Like, this team makes perfect sense. I just think it's just a health thing. Is like, come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I think their on paper championship would be challenged just by the fact that it is stacking variable on variable on variable, and the health thing is
Variable or variable.
These are just regular variables.
You can't use the word variable anymore on the pod.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to strike it from group chat.
Next week,
Joel,
baby.
Yeah,
Mark it down.
Joel's health is the clear one. Paul George's health cannot be taken for granted.
Yep.
More than half of this rotation has changed from last season. I think largely in very good and positive ways. But there's no continuity whatsoever. And frankly, I'm not sure there's ever been like a normal Joel Embiid Sixers offseason during his entire career. This is just the way things go over there. On top of that, you got a lot of players who can get very streaky, not just in shooting, but in total performance. Like, Caleb Martin has proven to be a very up and down guy. Kyle Lowry at this stage in his career, quite an up and down player. They have some of that strewn throughout the team in a way that I would say a lot needs to break right for the Sixers to make, say, an Eastern Conference Finals run or better, but they have literally everything they need for those breaks to happen. It's just going to be a roll of the dice.
I think this might sound hyperbolic, but I do believe this. If Maxey takes the leap to be a superstar from an all-star, I think it might swing the entire title race this year. And I don't think the step is so much of a leap as it is just like a half measure at this point. If he made one more bucket last season, he would have been in the top 5 in scorers in the entire NBA.
That's insane.
He somehow made the jump from 16.9% to 26.7 assist percentage while lowering his turnover percentage.
Yeah.
Which is like exactly what you want. And now he's moving a lot off the ball, and that's probably going to be to great use, especially with Paul George getting in there. How much of that was just feeding the ball to Joel Embiid as opposed to James Harden being that one? I have a stat for that as well. 66 assists to Embiid the previous season, 108 the next season. But you could definitely tell this guy is making higher level reads when he has the ball in his hands. He feels like he's playing with more confidence and just command of the court. Again, preseason basketball, et cetera, et cetera. But like, it just seems like he has it. Also had a really good quote about how he's now putting his hair back, and so now he has an unobstructed view of the court. So all these things combined.
The Elfrid Payton.
I think so. Yeah. And you know what?
My God.
I'm here for it. I believe it. And so like this can very clearly be like a 28 per game scorer, like an 8 assist guy. And all of a sudden we're talking about Maxey being like a guy in this league. And if that happens, then the Paul George part falls in line, then maybe you could pace out Embiid a little bit more, which is what they're talking about doing, which they probably should have done 5 years ago, but that's fine. It all makes sense to me. And so I don't know. I just have a lot of faith in what this team can be. Can it be that in the first year? I'm not sure, but there's a lot to like here.
I'll be watching Paul George, man, and the approach that he takes, because I think he wants to be more hands-off with this team, from what we've heard him saying, than he had to be with the Clippers, right? He just had to be their freaking best distributor, ball handler, all of that, like one-on-one score. He had to be there, everything. And again, like if you look up the lineup data, none of those lineups and like, Harden and Kawhi with no Paul George, or Kawhi, no, Paul George was the turnkey to everything.
He was holding that shit together.
But on defense too. And, Paul George has a lot of fans amongst his peers. And, everybody laughed at the kid in Charlotte for saying Paul George was his GOAT. And I think rightfully so, because that's just preposterous. But there's a reason for that. And it's like on offense, obviously, he's just hyper skilled in terms of his footwork, his ball handling, the jump shooting, just everything he does is so clean and technically sound. But on defense, he applies that same attention to detail, man. This guy is in every single spot that he needs to be. His anticipation, his instincts, for when to jump a passing lane or something like that is crazy. And then even at his advanced age, the different players that Paul George can credibly guard on a court, I just think it's going to bring so many things together, to make this thing beautiful. Now that he's freed up to not be the fulcrum of everything, he just has to stay on the court, which just has not been the case for years now.
Yeah, I think as far as stars go, Paul George is just one of the most reliable defenders in that cohort in the league. He's not exceptional in like a defensive player of the year, Giannis or Embiid kind of capacity, but uniformly very, very good and uniformly tries and invests in that stuff. And I think that speaks to the balance of what you're talking about, Justin. You have Maxey, who is ready to explode and has already shown a lot and is just such a great blow-by option. You have Paul George as this mediating intermediate player who can play off the ball, on the ball, guard all kinds of players. And then you have Joel Embiid, who we probably have not said enough about, probably the single most overwhelming scoring force in the league right now. And there's just nothing you can do with him when he is healthy and going. And I think that's part of the reason why he gets the criticism that he does, is he has every reason and ability to dominate all the time. And how he paces that out over the course of the season is something we're all looking forward to watching, because we want like peak Joel Embiid in the playoffs wrecking people. We all want it. We're all waiting for it. I think the reason people get a little curmudgeon-y about it is because we've waited a long time and we've had very few chances to actually see it.
This is the season. It's setting itself up so that Embiid is the ultimate trump card, at least in the East, where it's like, if you have Porzingis, if you have Karl Anthony Towns, well, guard this giant motherfucker in the post and see what you can do there. I get why people are upset with Embiid. The postseason track record is what it is. I thought last year I was a little surprised he got dinged so much because like he was clearly injured. It reminded me a lot of like when we go into a season saying a team should tank, and then when we watch them tank, you're like, this is a disaster. How can they be tanking so badly? And it's just like he was clearly hurt. He wasn't right. He was playing through a bunch of stuff, including like his face like melting in real time. And so like I kind of give him a pass for that one. I think this is the make good season. If like he doesn't make something out of this, especially as they're pacing him, especially as he has Andre Drummond, the best rebounder in the world, apparently, back there in order to spell him when he needs to be spelled, like then I'm ready to bury him. But like this is shaping up to be like the perfect season for him to have the season we've always wanted from him.
And Maxey is his best teammate ever. I think the only person that comes close to this is that lone Jimmy Butler season, which Jimmy was excellent. But Maxey's the greatest teammate this guy has ever had. We don't even need to bring up the light-skinned guy from Australia. Like, this is
Covington?
easily... This is easily his greatest teammate, man. And the fact that it's being buttressed by a guy like Paul George, again, like you have to be excited if you're a Sixers fan for what they can potentially accomplish this season.
I have this down as the essential question. Who's the most intriguing non-Paul George summer addition? And just to give you the list of new guys on this team, we got Caleb Martin, we got Andre Drummond, we got Gershon Yabusele, you got Reggie Jackson, you got Jared McCain. There's probably 7 more that I'm missing. Which one jumps out to you, Woz?
Easily Yabusele.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And it's because he damn near ruined my goddamn summer in that first half against Team USA. I was like, is this really, is this seriously happening? This guy's gonna make every single jump shot and one physical play. I was like, yo, this guy is something. The fact that he got signed directly after that, I think spoke to that performance, man. I just love the physicality and toughness that he brings. I love that idea, man, that like he could bring that mentality to this Sixers group who, like nobody's thought of these guys as like the toughest team in the NBA, right? And so I just like that component, man. Like, call me old school, man. I like the Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason, Davis boys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think he could bring that element with like legitimate skill to the lineup, man. So that's who's most intriguing to me. And as I mentioned, I've been a KJ Martin fan since the Rockets days. Like, I just like his pep as well. The same stuff. Like, he's really athletic and he brings some skill to it. And I think if he can just be deployed in terms of like, like with the Rockets, he didn't have a super defined role because like the nature of a team that's like got all these young guys and you want to see what they can do. Like, there wasn't a lot of discipline there. I think if he can be like, if the coach can be like, listen, this is all we're asking you to do, and he could be deployed that way, I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, KJ fits into this mold with this team where there's a really interesting balance of guys who play slow and guys who play fast, guys who play in order and guys who create chaos in a way that I think is healthy. If you lean too much in one direction, you can just go off the rails or become very kind of staid too quickly. And so the Sixers, because of guys like KJ Martin, because of some of the athletes that they have on their roster, are in a position to be interesting all the time and be kind of a live wire, unpredictable team. Yabusele has to be the guy here, though. I think the combination of him not being in the league for 5 years and changing his game and his body in the meantime, and so you have the dual interest of, can he, like, what kind of NBA player is he now? And then everything we just saw him do in the Olympics that Woz talked about. I can't wait to see how he fits with this group.
I'm concerned, though, because the track record of guys overseas that popped in the Olympics or in FIBA basketball coming over and never really matches what you'd hope for. Like, the last one I could really think that actually did it was probably Rubio, but even he was a muted version of like the electric, Jason Kidd future of the point guard position sort of guy that he ultimately became. But I think Yabusele is falling into a very nice role for himself, where if he could just be the pop off the bench to use his physicality and his ability to get downhill, surprisingly enough, against second units, like I think he fits a role. And if he could do that, I think he'll instantly become a helpful member of this team and also a fan favorite.
Yeah, he's not being asked to be who he was for Team France. It's to play a role. It's to be, like to your point about like the international players, it's much more like later career Luis Scola or something. Like he doesn't have to be the star of the international team. He has to be the guy who gives the Sixers good minutes. And they've been looking especially for good backup minutes. I think I do want to give a little bit more of a shout to, as you said, self-proclaimed best rebounder in the world, Andre Drummond. Back for another tour. Even. Yeah, back for another tour with the Sixers. Good for him. This is a team that, even though they have a dominant center, was a shit defensive rebounding team last season. And so if Drummond can help shore that up at all for the second unit, that's a boon. If he can make the non-Joel minutes sing at all or survivable at all, as all Sixers fans know, that is a huge, huge deal. So I hope he can do that this time around. He actually, I thought, was pretty damn good for the Bulls last year relative to what that team was and what he was asked to do, but gave them some really good minutes.
Very good backup who could spot start whenever you need him to. We should mention Caleb Martin here, if only because he's going to play the role of like Shane Battier for the Big Three Heat, where it's like LeBron's playing the four. It's like, no, Caleb Martin is actually going to be doing the dirty work on the defensive end. And then maybe Paul George picks up the guy late in the game. But like, if that guy is the scrapper that he was for the Heat, if he could give them a little bit of feistiness on the defensive end while still being able to stretch, like I think he fits perfectly in what they're looking to do there. Just the fact that they were able to go out and get him at his dollar amount, I thought was a pretty big boon. And frankly, like as the Clippers deal with this PJ Tucker situation, and it turns out that he might only play 28 games in total for them all of last year's and then get let go this year, it's like, just goes to show you that like the Harden deal still paying dividends for the Sixers, where it's like if they had that $11.6 million on the books, like they never would have been able to do a lot of what they're doing, including getting Caleb Martin in there. All right. Anything else for the Sixers?
Did we mention that they got Eric Gordon?
We did not. No, I forgot him.
He's in the mix. I think he is also in this category of guys who are a little streakier than you would like. And of course, at his age, there's some defensive limitations just in terms of mobility, but there are worse veterans to roll into the lineup for spacing, and certainly a guy who has to be guarded, which is something that the Sixers have not had enough of historically.
And if things are going right, we won't see a single minute of Reggie Jackson this season.
All right, number 6, last team on the docket for today who fell into the 6th spot late in the process as a result of the Karl Anthony Towns trade. I've been going over and over on this trade since we even talked about it, which was a couple days removed from the actual trade. And I have to say, I still think the Knicks did a good job of getting Towns. But here's where I fall on this, and this is our essential question, is I don't know if the Wolves got better as a result of this trade.
Justin, you know the Wolves did not get better.
I know that they did not get better. But I also don't know that they didn't get worse. And so are we sure that like the Wolves are worse without Towns, and they didn't build Towns in the aggregate, shouts to Billy Bean, with like a Naz Reid, the shooting from Dante DiVincenzo, the flexibility with Julius Randle? I'm like, I don't think that much differently about the Wolves now than I did a couple days ago when they had Towns. That's where I'm kind of netting out.
You don't know that they got better, but you don't know that they didn't get worse?
They didn't get better. But I don't know.
Can we just cut a couple negatives out of your way?
Get worse. You're saying they didn't get better, but they didn't get worse.
So you think they are kind of more or less standing in place from the team they were last season?
Yeah, we probably should have just said that. Okay. That's the bit.
I think if they are the team they were last year, it's going to take more work to get there. That's kind of what worries me about them. Is Cat is not a perfect player, but he is a more streamlined fit, and I say more because more is relative, than Julius Randle is. And the spacing that Cat provides is easier to deploy in a lineup than what Julius Randle is going to be asked to do. And so if you have two guys who, admittedly, both of their decision-making can be spotty, both of their ability to judge the moment and know when to jump in can be spotty, but one of them can shoot much, much better than the other. And I think also important, Towns gave them a piece of their identity in terms of how big they were playing and the options that they had. And if they're going to find that with Julius Randle, they're going to have to reinvent it.
I don't. I think the Wolves got meaningfully worse. I don't even think this is a question to me. I'm not saying that Julius Randle individually isn't still a high quality NBA player. I think specific to the fit on this team, like he's supposed to be doing all these jab steps and fadeaways as Rudy Gobert hangs out in the paint. And I get it. He played a bunch of minutes with Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, who aren't stretch bigs by any means whatsoever, right? I just don't know why I'm letting this guy handle the rock when I got Ant Edwards. And so if he's playing mostly off of the ball and not being allowed to do, the dribble, shot creation stuff, what is he actually doing? We know it's not shooting. Well, it's shooting, but not making. And so and in the playoffs, forget about it. Like these lineups are not, there's no logic to a to a Rudy, and Julius Randle lineup. Like that doesn't make any sense in the postseason. And, I think in the regular season, they will still be one of the league's best defenses in the regular season. But I just don't see how they make up the difference on offense when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, let me be your phone a friend, Justin. Let me get back in your corner for a little counterpoint to say that in the regular season last year, the Wolves were much better overall with Ant and Cat together than when Ant played without him. In the playoffs, that completely flipped, and Ant working without Cat was one of Minnesota's best looks. And I think what's hard for me is like a lot of that is Naz Reid being a very good player and fit for them. And Julius Randle complicates that picture.
Yeah. I almost wonder if we negate the Randle part of this.
So Randle doesn't exist on this team?
Negate the all-star, all-NBA guy who's going to play 30 plus. He's going to play more than that, I would guess.
That is what complicates things, but I do wonder if they're best set, if they close games with Reid in that spot, does everything click into place? We're still not sure what role Randle plays for this team. I will point out just briefly that this is an odd season. So this is 2025, which means that Randle will probably be able to hit threes because for some reason he can only hit threes in odd seasons. Like go look that up. It's one of the weirdest little statistical wrinkles in the league. So maybe he comes around and plays bully ball, but like I wouldn't be mad if he was like a sixth man for this team and Reid was the guy who was playing the four most of the time and you're working DiVincenzo, and like that to me is a pretty good team. I also think this is a conversation that really depends on where you start with the Wolves. If you saw them like I did is like maybe the fourth best team in the West going into the season, like then I'm not going to change them all that much. If you thought they were going to be 2 or 3, maybe it's a different conversation for you. But like, I think they could be still pretty good, if not elite in the West this year.
Julius Randle is not playing a 6-man role on this team. This guy is trying to get paid. I think logically, it would make sense that like, yo, man, like we're going to de-emphasize this guy, but like he's an all-star player for whatever that means. He's made third team all like the coach can't come in and say, yo, we're completely de-emphasizing you. And by the way, hopefully you get a mid-level exception on your next deal. Like that's not going to play. Like it's just not. Like he's going to have to get minutes. That's what like if we lived in a different kind of world, like not the NBA world where egos and stuff like that come into play, where they could just de-emphasize this dude and be like, look, Naz Reid makes more sense for what we're trying to do here. We're going to let you, cook against bench units and all of that and let you be happy and eat those kind of scraps. Okay, cool. But that we know that's not going to happen. He's going to play like Rob said, 30 plus minutes a game, and it's going to be clunky in terms of fit.
And that's where Randle's contractual reality is kind of a double whammy, because he does have every reason financially, as Woz laid out, to want to play more and want to do his thing and show off what he can do to potential suitors. He also, because he only has 1 year under contract and then a player option, like the vehicle to financial flexibility for the Wolves here depends on him not being a part of the team. And so one of the big
to,
returns of Karl Anthony Towns, a player who
is
admittedly
not gonna
is
be on the team next year.
he might not be on the team. And so I really like Dante DiVincenzo. I think he's a good fit for the Wolves.
Oh, yeah.
Randall's a very complicated one who may be gone very quickly. And yeah, Towns is hard to trade, but even with that understood, I'm still like underwhelmed by this being the package.
I don't disagree with that. That was pretty surprising until this day. It's like, oh man, Towns only went for that. Randall's just, the situation is messy, but like if you find a way to mitigate his impact both on the court and then also like in the mix, like in the chemistry mix, I think it makes sense. Like, can we trade Julius Randle somewhere? Who wants Julius Randle?
Nobody. That's the point.
I like Justin's explanation. If you find a way to mitigate all the stuff, everything
It'll
else
be
looks great.
You pretend this guy doesn't exist, you'll be fine. I think the other part, yeah, go ahead.
If we're gonna talk about it in this way, I think we should. Like, the Wolves have a lot to figure out. What it is a vote of confidence, I think, in two guys in particular, Naz Reid, who we've talked about, being a meaningful part of the team, being able to replicate some of what Cat gave you at the very least, and Anthony Edwards. If you're going to trade away a meaningful part of the core from a team that just went to the conference finals, you're saying, one, Ant is so clearly the guy that we have time and space to remodel this team around him a little bit, and he can still carry us pretty far. And two, that he is not so reliant on Karl Anthony Towns for spacing, or a player like that for spacing, that he can make do with less than ideal circumstances. And both, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty fair bets for Ant as a prospect and who he is right now as a player. Like, that guy is proven and electric and very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this is shaping up this season as a whole, a referendum on Towns. And now I think he's going to be pretty good with the Knicks. I think they could leverage what he does very well. But I also think like the Wolves just have enough to replicate most of what he brings. I think defensively, they have enough dogs on that team where it's like if Gobert can just lock down the paint, we have Edwards and McDaniels in order to send people out there.
We'll be good at that. Randall will be good at that when he's like into it. Like, he'll be a good defender.
Yeah, he's a big guy. But then like with the spacing, like I think Reed did such a good job of that last year. It's like I again, they could rebuild him in the aggregate. And so I get the logic behind it. We'll see how it mets out this year. I do think it's going to be bumpy if they do indeed figure it out. And plus you throw in the fact that this seems like they're going to be playing two rookies in the mix here. Rob Dillingham, number 8 pick. They traded a big pick for him in order to get him in there. I also think that's actually pretty nice way to integrate a guy like Dillingham, who's incredibly small and is definitely going to have to play through an entire season to get his feet wet. Like having DiVincenzo in there to kind of almost like usher him into that role is nice. You don't have to force him there. Then like Terrence Shannon Jr. had a really good summer league. In fact, I remember Isaiah Blakely, our producer, first night of summer league was like, hey, Terrence Shannon had this big game. Like, we should talk about him. I was like, I don't know. And then we kind of ignored it, but he has looked pretty good thus far. So shouts to Isaiah who flagged that in advance.
Yeah, I think there's a decent chance he's going to be in the rotation, despite the fact that the Wolves have a lot of good wing players. But I think there's going to be a Terrence Shannon month where somebody's out and he comes in and gives them like really, really solid, like respectable play and production from a rookie, which he just looks more NBA ready than a lot of these other guys, including Rob Dillingham. So yeah, I like, as far as like tangential benefits of the trade go, easing the backup point guard problem and responsibilities through DiVincenzo, through Julius Randle as a playmaker, those things are nice for them. I think ultimately I'm wondering, like, what does the best version of this Wolves team look like? Is it more or less the projected starting 5 with Randle stepping in for Towns? Is it small ball with McDaniels at the 4? Something that they didn't do that much of because they were trying to play bigs together a lot of the time. Is it Naz and Gobert together in the front court? There's a lot of reasonable options. I'm just not sure which one is ultimately going to be the best one for them.
I just hate the politics of the team. The politics are a mess. Dudes, with powerful agents and solid, to decent reputations in terms of what they've accomplished. Like, they could mess this up quite easily. Like, it's not one of these things where there's guys who you could just banish. Just be like, all right, go sulk and go cry somewhere. We don't care. I just don't know that they could do that with Julius Randle. So the politics become so tricky for me, which is why I have apprehensions about the trade, what they received back in the trade. But, at the end of the day, like Karl Towns is owed $220 million over 4 years. They had to get off of that freaking deal. They're the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? Like, this is not the Yankees, okay? In the Steinbrenner years. Like they had to do it. And so if this is the price to like have this uneasy sort of clunky thing for 1 year with Julius, I think it's fine. And last year, they made a bet that Ant Edwards was a superstar, and I think they kind of were proven right about that in terms of being like, yo, we have a win now program. We got a kid, even if he's 22, he's a freaking bona fide star. And I think they're doubling down on that bet in terms of what they believe Ant can do and accomplish. So
I think that's the key there. We could twist ourselves into knots about Julius Randle and DiVincenzo and whatnot. If Ant takes a step forward,
if he's an MVP candidate, none of this shit matters.
It probably doesn't matter. If he's taking even like a half step leap in terms of his playmaking, then it opens up all sorts of opportunities. Like, could you close a playoff game with him and DiVincenzo in the backcourt? And so like maybe Randle or Reed gets in there. That could be super compelling. Obviously it gets a little clunky though if Ant can't be that driving force, if he's not making those right reads, if he doesn't have Conley there as a safety valve to take that over. I think that is just going to be the most important thing for this team. I was reluctant to think that he would do that this year in a single season. And that's why I had the Wolves around this kind of vicinity going before the Cat trade, but I think it's going to happen, just is a matter of when at this point.
Yeah. Can I name a couple guys?
Of course.
Joe Ingles reunited with Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert, and it feels so good. That said, I kind of think they're going to miss Kyle Anderson's defense a little bit. Low key, like the second unit muck things up. Like so long, he will unexpectedly block you or disrupt a pass from the middle of things kind of impact. Joe Ingles can play the facilitator sort of role for those second units and can give them some size if they want like a different look at the 3-4. But ultimately, he's a very different kind of defensive player. And I thought Kyle Anderson, for as complex a fit as he is in his own way, was actually a pretty nice Timberwolf.
Do you remember when Joe Ingles effectively retired like 3 years ago? He had like a big old injury in Utah. They gave him a nice little send-off. I think they had to waive him in order to make some transaction work. They brought him on to the broadcast. And I remember watching that game. It's like, oh, Ingles, man, love Ingles. Oh, that's so sad that he ended up like that. This is now his third team since that. He is going into his age 37 season, and he is going to be a rotation player in the NBA for a good team. Like, that's insane. Shout out to Joe Ingles.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this team? Anything else on this tier?
Did we talk about Dante DiVincenzo enough?
He's good.
One of the best shooters in the world, can pop off in a way that other kind of like pure spot up guys can't, like has enough juice off the dribble, has enough creativity to his game, is not a complete sieve on defense. Going to be a good rotation player. Justin, you spotlit the like possibility of maybe he and Ant finishing games or finishing some matchups together as kind of a closing backcourt. I think that's incredibly realistic for some of the opponents that could be on the Wolves docket.
40% from three on 8.7 attempts last year. Now, you'd expect some regression because that's insane to shoot that percentage on that sort of volume.
Genuinely.
Like, he now has 2 straight years of hitting threes at around that rate. And so I think like he had a little bit of a down year, I believe, when he had that half season with the Kings. I think he's rounded into the player everyone kind of hoped he would be coming out of college. And like, he's really good on an awesome contract. So like, I get if he was the key to moving Cat, like getting him in addition to the draft pick and Randall seems like the biggest part of that.
He's also now Wolverine on the bed staring at the picture of the Nova Knicks that spurned him. Tough look for our guy.
Just a GQ article today about the Nova Knicks, including Dante DiVincenzo. So,
oh no,
yeah, I saw that on Instagram.
I can't wait to see the creative editing where it's like Dante DiVincenzo would have thought this or may have been this right before it went to print. All right, so that's it for everyone except for the top 5 in the NBA. We made it. So check that episode out on Monday. Still working on a holiday because that's what we do here. But check that out. We'll be back then. Thank you to Isaiah Blakely. Thank you to Ben Cruz. We'll see you next time.